Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Eat Like Ruby podcast. I am here today by myself doing a nice, juicy solo episode. So, the last 2 weeks I had Shaq with me, and I feel like we did some cool episodes there. There was some just cool chat, bit of Q&A vibes from the audience, just covered a few different topics with nutrition and training, but I feel like they were quite value sort of educational eps. So if you haven't listened to those, put them on your to listen list. But in the meantime, I'm solo epping today, and I'm going to talk today about something I've kind of spoken about before, but in a little bit of a different way. And I think it's just a good time of year to look at this and just piece it all together. So what I want to talk about today is almost setting up like long-term plans or having a bit of a long-term idea about what you're doing with your nutrition and training. And if you're a regular listener, you'll know we've spoken to this at different times. Sometimes we just touch on it in episodes, and then we have done specific episodes on it, but not for a while. So I thought, good time to go over this today. And the reason I love to do this is because I think too many people have big goals and things they would love to achieve with their nutrition and training, and especially with their physique and their body composition. And they think about it in a very sort of quick, frantic, quick fix kind of energy. And I think it's something that if we can step back and look at it over time and actually structure it properly, it works out significantly better. I think a lot of people can obviously relate to either themselves or seeing people make very drastic decisions, do things very randomly with nutrition and training and kind of spin their wheels and not get anywhere. So I think when we really want to achieve something, we've got to kind of step back, understand what's required to achieve the thing we want to achieve, and work out when we're going to be able to sort of prioritize things and really get after it to actually get the results that we want. So another reason that I really love to have this convo now is because, again, I think a lot of people think about this stuff a little bit too late in the year. I think people start thinking about this like middle of October, and then they're like, fuck, summer's coming. I want to be shredded. I want to be lean. I want to be in shape. Beach season, bikini season, short shorts, festivities, all the things. I want to look and feel my best. And if we really think about that, I spoke about this a lot last year. I speak about it a lot to the Eat Like Ruby girls. But if we think about someone starting to think about that stuff in October, for a lot of people, the festive season and the summer outfits and all of that shit I just said really kicks in November. And when we look at that, you've suddenly left yourself with this 3 or 4 week window where you're like, fuck, I really want to get shredded or get a certain result. And it's very much a scramble. It's very frantic to do so. And usually we either just can't pull it off, or we might do something really drastic, get a bit of a quick temporary result, and then lose it pretty quickly when the festivities kick in. So it can seem a little bit crazy to be talking about this shit in July and August. But like I said, I personally think for myself and for my Eat Like Ruby girls, the people that get the best results, not only with physique and body comp and all these things, but also with mindset and enjoyment of nutrition and training and actually feeling good about all these things, are thinking about it in advance. They're setting up realistic, sensible plans for themselves, and they're actually making it all work together instead of just randomly scrambling at different times to try and quickly get in shape. So just a cool thing to clock, even if you're if you're someone who has maybe done that over the years, have a little think like, do I always leave it really late? Am I chilling right now in winter? Maybe just cruising a little bit, which is totally fine. I'm all for it. But if that is you, do you want to think about it a little sooner than you normally would and get a bit of a plan in place now to actually move in the direction that you want to go with enough time to do so? So I'm kind of going to speak a little bit today about people in different positions, because obviously if we think about a person who has a weight loss goal of 20 to 30 kilos, they're obviously going to tackle the next 6 to 12 months of nutrition and training a bit different to a person who has a goal of, losing a tiny bit of weight and just leaning up. And they're going to have a different goal they're going to need a different plan compared to people that don't have a weight loss goal at all. So there's a few different positions that people are in with this stuff. And I think I went really heavily on the summer chat there, but I really want to talk today about sort of setting up, or not setting up, but thinking about your nutrition and training as like a 6 month, if not even like a 12-month kind of time frame. And I want to preface that by saying we absolutely don't have to sit here right now and go like, in February next year, I'll eat this much. And in April next year, I'll do this training program. It's definitely not about doing that, but it's more so just stepping back and looking like, do I want to achieve fat loss at some point? Do I want to achieve muscle gain at some point? Do I have a performance goal or an event? Do I have holidays and other things external of nutrition and training that I need to factor in? Because again, if we can step back and look over time and really actually work with all these things, we can then set up a plan that works with all these things instead of being like, oh my God, I'm going on a holiday and I feel like shit, I need to do a quick diet. Or, oh my God, I'm doing a triathlon or turf games. Like Shaq and I spoke about that the other week, where people are kind of chasing two rabbits and they're doing all these different things. And therefore, I feel like if we don't look ahead and kind of set loose, low-key plans over 6 to 12 months, we find ourselves going through those 6 to 12 months and not really optimizing anything or not really killing it with anything, because you're like, oh, I spent a bit of time over here scrambling, trying to get in shape. I spent a bit of time over here, like running, bit of time over here on a holiday, letting it all come undone. So I think it's just cool to like be a bit ahead of the curve and look and think like, oh, what would I love to prioritize at different times? What goals do I have over this time frame? And then just set it up a little bit more intelligently. I'm a huge fan of this. So like I said, it's obviously going to be a little bit different depending on big weight loss goal, small weight loss goal, no weight loss goal, muscle gain goal, performance goal. Like everyone's going to be a little bit different, but I'm going to kind of dabble in these different positions today and we'll just see where we go. The first thing I want to speak to is people with a big weight loss goal. Let's say over 15 kilos. If you're someone who's got a goal to lose over 15 kilos and really you're in that position where you know that fat loss and weight loss are the number one priority before you start thinking about running a marathon or doing a muscle gain phase or anything like that, I feel like most people in that position know that that is their sort of their main goal. And they're also like, I'm not really thinking about a gaining phase. I want to kind of get this off first. So whether it's 15, whether it's 50, honestly, just if you're a person who knows that weight loss is the number one thing, and I would really say if you're in a position where you know you need to lose weight to be in a healthy weight range, this is what I really want to speak to first, because I think obviously if we even just think about that sentence, if you need to lose weight to be in a healthy weight range and to just be in good health, we want to make that the priority. We want to make that the focus. So my advice always to these people, obviously my number one piece of advice to everyone is get education, like get enough education to truly know what is required for you to achieve your goal, whatever it is. So if you're in this position, I would say make sure you really know and understand what is required to achieve fat loss and weight loss and what is required of you personally to achieve fat loss and weight loss. Because obviously we know to achieve fat loss, we need a calorie deficit. What's a deficit for me and what's a deficit for someone else is going to be really different. So you want to know what that is for you so you can obviously then look and say, okay, I know this is my number one goal and I know how to achieve it. To me, that's an absolute no-brainer. You want to know that you're doing the right thing to work towards that goal. And then what I would advise for a person in this position, if you're looking, I'd be looking, say, over the next 6 months. If we think about 6 months, you're really looking at the rest of this year and then the first couple of months next year. Let's say if we sort of look towards Feb next year, which is fucking wild when you think about it. But the reason I like to say that is because I think if we do look at that time frame, we're looking at probably the next 3-ish months where people are kind of thinking about that coming into summer phase. Obviously, we're running the fat loss phase in Eat Like Ruby. We run it for this reason at this time because we know that's a big focus for people. And like I said before, I like to start it with enough time to have it actually be successful, have people learn what they need to learn and be done before the festive season kicks in. So that's a little bit off topic, but coming back to a person in this position, I'd be looking at that 6 months because you're really sort of looking at spending or like what time can I optimize fat loss? How am I going to navigate the festive season, whatever that looks like for me? And then what's my plan coming out the other side of the festive season? That's just a really loose overview that I would be doing if I was in this position. And like I said, it can be a bit crazy to sit here now and think about what does my nutrition look like in February next year. But I think as something as loose as like, I'm going to spend like 3-ish months in a deficit, and then I'm maybe looking at like 4 to 6 weeks of festivities and parties and all those things. And I'll come back to that in a second. And then obviously when I come out the other side of that in the new year, I'm looking at going back into a deficit. If we think about a person, let's say, who's aiming to lose 20 kilos, let's just say roughly, give or take, spending 3 months doing that, spending a couple of weeks enjoying the festive season in a moderate mindful way, and then going back into a deficit in the new year is a perfect plan. And like I said before, you want to know what the deficit is. You want to know actually how to do all those things. So I love that plan. I'm a huge fan of that plan for a person in this position. And I said this on the podcast a few months ago, but if you guys have ever heard me say like a fat loss phase should be short, sharp, direct, effective, all those things that I get fired up about. If you're someone who does have a large weight loss goal, we're not so much thinking like that, because obviously if we think about losing 20 kilos or give or take, we're not doing that in a really short, sharp, direct time frame. Like that's something that is going to take a bit longer. So if we're looking at a 6-month time frame, I'd be looking at like really what weeks or months out of that is going to work for me to implement an effective deficit that I can stick to majority of the time, enough so that it is actually effective. And then what is my plan for the festive season? Because obviously we know that can look like a lot different than normal with our nutrition and even training, food, festivities, drinks, all the things. We want to have a little bit of a plan in place to enjoy that without it coming undone, which, like I said, I'll come back to that in a sec. But that's really what I'd be thinking if you have a big weight loss goal. I feel like I've spoken about this a little bit. I'm going to say it was like end of March. I did an episode that was similar to this, maybe start of April. So if you want a little bit more info on that, I'd go back and have a look. I'll see if we can like find the episode. We'll put it in the notes or something. But I don't want to speak too much today to that big weight loss goal, because as much as that can seem like that can be quite a big thing for people to get their head around, losing 20 kilos, when we actually settle into an effective deficit and a realistic, enjoyable, sustainable plan, that's actually quite a simple process. And I don't want to take away from the fact that the person is still working their ass off and really getting after it, absolutely. But actually knowing what needs to be in place in order for that to be successful is actually quite simple. It's quite obvious. And if you don't know that, you can join the Eat Like Ruby Fat Loss phase. But that's how I would be tackling a big weight loss goal. If you're someone who doesn't have a big weight loss goal, let's say you're in a position where you're sitting there kind of going like, oh, I'd love to lose 4 kilos. I'd love to lose 3 kilos. Anything from that sort of like 2 to 6 kilo mark. I really want to speak to this today because I really want people to think about, and this is a little bit of a cock block on my own business because I am running a fat loss phase in a few weeks, and obviously it's the final round for the year. We're pumping it up. We're excited. We've got lots of girls in there. Like, I'm keen as fuck for this round, but I really advise people who are in that position of just being like, oh, I'd love to lose a couple of kilos, but don't need to lose weight to be in a healthy weight range. I would really advise you to stop for a sec, let go of your I need to lose a couple of kilos story just for a second, and actually ask yourself, do I? Because I think so many people have just held on to this for so long. I think it's so common for people to be like 73 kilos, for example, and be like, I'd just love to be under 70. I'd love to be in the 60s. And I see the exact same thing with people that are 63 kilos and are like, I'd just love to be under 60. Even people that are like 62, 61, wherever you fall. But if you're in that position where you're like, I'd just love to get under that certain number, I would nearly bet my life you've got too much of a fixation on that actual number, on that actual new weight range, etc. And you've moved away from the actual physique goal and the actual real goal. And we've spoken about this before, like weight loss and the number is never the actual goal. There's something deeper that people want to achieve, whether it's more confidence, wear different outfits, feel better at the beach, feel better at the gym, lean up, tone up, whatever it is. There's something deeper happening for people that they want to achieve, more so than just, I want to be under 60. What actually is going to happen in your life? What do you think is going to be different? What do you think is going to be better when you're under 60? Really get clear on that. That is your actual goal. And then the thing I really, really want people to think about, and this is where, like I said, it's almost a cock block on the fat loss phase, but there are so many people, in my opinion, and I'm going to use myself as an example in a second, but there are so many people, in my opinion, who especially are like in that 50 to 60 kilo weight range and are so adamant on just being a little bit lighter that they don't realize, in my opinion, they would be better off eating more food, lifting heavy as fuck weights, eating enough protein, and actually building a wicked rig. I think people are so adamant on dropping a few more kilos, being in that certain weight range or being a certain number, being 3 kilos lighter, whatever the actual wording is for you, that you're not really opening your eyes and thinking about the fact that's like, do I need to be lighter, or do I actually want to be more lean, more toned, in better shape, like have that better body composition? And would that actually be at the same weight I am now, or even possibly a heavier weight, but a bit more of a built physique? If I put a wicked structured progressive training program in place, like I said, eat enough to fuel that. Like if you eat at maintenance, get sufficient protein every day and really get a solid structured progressive training program in place, you could weigh the same number you weigh right now, like I said, possibly even a little bit more, but really start to build great overall shape. If we think about all the episodes I've done about muscle gain and toning, etc., we know that a toned physique, a lean physique, is a physique with enough muscle mass on it and a low enough body fat level to reveal that muscle. I think so many people are spending way too much fucking time trying to get the body fat off. When we think about that, it's the two parts that build the toned physique. And I just think there's such a focus on that one part being fat loss and weight loss. And I think that's being caused by people getting fixated on exact numbers. And I think if you can drop that exact number and really think like, it's not the number, it's the body comp, the physique, the shape that I actually want. And then if we think about that, does it actually need to be built instead of dieted down and dieted off? I think that's so important to ask and so important to catch with yourself. And like I said, I'm going to use myself as an example because everybody knows I'm fat loss phasing right now. And this is such a different and interesting fat loss phase for me right now because I don't want to get too off topic, but I know I'm going to. I started this phase around 62 kilos and I'd just been sort of chilling, eating at maintenance, happy days. And then I went up to about 67, 68, I think was the heaviest I got. And now I'm obviously dieting down fat loss. And I've mentioned this many times, but when I've finished fat loss phases in the past, I've always been around that like 57 to 58 mark on the scale. And it's just a super interesting thing that I'm going through right now where I'm looking at my videos, like progress photos, but I always take videos from earlier this year when I was 62 kilos, even 63. And I'm just like, I fucking love that body. Like I really do. And I'm not saying that to be up myself or whatever. People can take that however they want. But I look at that and I'm like, that body does not need to be 5 kilos lighter. No way. And if I really piece that together, I don't know exactly where I'm going to end this fat loss phase. I don't know what the weight will be. I'm not really using weight. I'm really heavily relying on pictures and videos to actually just see how am I looking? Am I achieving the physique that I want? Is it moving in the direction that I want? And then obviously getting to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm actually happy to stop here. I don't want to push any further fat loss. That'll be the stopping point for me. It won't be like, oh, but I have to get to 58, I have to get under 60 or anything like that. It's very much about the look and the shape and everything. So if I think about that, if I was just so adamant on those things I said before, like I have to get under 60 or I've always been 58, even like it's really common for people to be like, oh, I was 57 or 65, whatever it is for you, years ago and I felt great. So you're just really like fixated in your mind of like, I want to get back there. But again, we even want to pull that apart and go, do you need to get back to that number or is it that you want to get back to feeling great? Because even for myself, again, when I piece all this together, I used to feel great around that 58 mark when I had dieted down, fat loss, whatever. But my physique has changed a lot over the last few years. Obviously, I've done a fair few muscle gain phases. I've built a lot of shape. I've built a lot of muscle. And like I said, when I look now at the 62 kilo physique, I'm like, I love this. There's no way I want that to be 4 or 5 kilos lighter. So it's just an interesting thing to think about. And like I said, if I was just so adamant on getting under the 60 or getting back to where I was, it would be such a cock block on the actual goal that I have, that is to just look and feel my best in training, in short shorts, in the gym, at the beach, in different outfits, whatever. That's my actual goal. Like, I just want to be in wicked shape. I don't give a fuck if that's 58 or 68. So I just think that's so important for people to clock. Do you need to let go of the numbers fixation? And have you been just pushing for those numbers for so long and not really stoked with your physique or stoked with your result? Do you actually need to go a little bit in the other direction and be like, fuck, I actually need to eat a little bit more? Then therefore I can lift a little bit more, really get after in the gym, start to build the glutes and the hammies and the quads and the delts and all the things that are going to create that toned physique and that overall shape that I want. I think so many people, and I'm not saying this to be rude, but I think it's really important to just think about yourself. And this is completely a personal thing. Like, you might love this, but I think so many people are so adamant on hitting those numbers that when they get there, it's actually like that skinny fat kind of scrawny look, all of these things that is not actually the ideal physique that we want, but we were just so focused on getting leaner, getting lighter, dropping weight. When we get there, it's super important to be like, is this actually the physique that I wanted? Because like I'm saying, the physique that you want might be 4 kilos heavier, but it's got the shape, it's got the definition, it's got the quote muscle tone, you've toned up like everyone wants to. But I think a lot of people are not really understanding that process and not being okay with that process, possibly meaning that scale weight is a little bit heavier than it has been before, or than it used to be, or than the number that you've got in your mind. But when you are at that scale weight, the physique might actually be the physique that you want. And like I'm saying, that's very much the case for me. If I think back to myself as probably like in my mid-20s, and I'm actually sitting here today on my 33rd birthday. So now that I'm old and wise, I've got all the answers. But when I was like mid-20s, I was absolutely that person that always sat around the 62, 63 kilo mark. And you're always like, oh, I'd love to lose a couple of kilos. And in your mind, you're like, yeah, it'd be cool to just sit under 60. Like, if I'm sitting here and I'm feeling like, oh, I'd love to just lean up a little bit, then you kind of just piece together like, oh, well, then under 60 would be a great place to hang all the time. And it's just been a cool process for me to go through. I'd say this year is super different to any muscle gain and fat loss phase I've done in the past, because for me in the past, it very much has been that tunnel vision of getting under 60. And now I'm just becoming super aware that when I think about long-term, like I said, I don't know where this fat loss phase exactly is going to wrap up and what I'm going to weigh in at and all those things. And obviously I'm shooting. So, you know, sometimes you want to get a little bit leaner and lighter to shoot. But when I think about, I said to Shaq the other day, if I do shoot around that 58 kilo mark, let's just say, my goal straight out the back of that shoot will be going straight back to 22 or 2300 cals and getting back up to 62 kilos straight away. Like, I don't want to walk around with that skinny, scrawny body. For me, I've said this before, but that weight for me has no hips, no glutes, no nothing. Like, she's like a tiny little boy, honestly. So I said to him the other day, regardless of where I actually end this fat loss phase, when I think about long-term nutrition training and the physique that I want to walk around with, like, I work my ass off for my physique, and I respect anyone who's listening who does. If you feel like you're dieting and you're training, you're doing all these things all the time for your physique, mad respect, and rightly so, you want to walk around feeling your best. So I'll never shame that. But for me, I'm thinking long-term, walking around feeling my best, I think for me now is more like a 62 to 63 kilo physique, as opposed to what I would have said probably 3 or 4 years ago, that it was 58. And I just think that's super cool to clock. And if I was so adamant on numbers and not letting go of numbers that I'd held on to in the past, I wouldn't have that realization. And therefore, I'd probably actually walk around with a physique that I didn't love, but I'm like, oh, well, I'm under 60, so it's all good. So I just think it's really important to think about all that and really ask yourself, do I actually need another fucking fat loss phase? And like I said, guys, it's not in my best interest to say that 4 weeks out from the Eat Like Ruby fat loss phase starting. But I never want people in that hamster wheel of just trying to get off another kilo when it's like, dude, get on way more calories, get the fuck after it in the gym. You're going to have way more food to eat. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to lift way better. And in 12 months' time, you're going to have the best fucking rig you've probably ever had. So important to think about. And another little thing I'll touch on here, I won't spend too much time on this because Shaq and I spoke about it heaps in the last few weeks, but if you're in a position where you're thinking about the next 6 to 12 months and there's like performance or event goals, like we spoke about the other week with marathons, triathlons, high rocks, all of those things, again, like we said on that episode, you want to think about the fact that those things are going to require a lot of energy. Calories are energy. We want a big intake coming in. We want a solid training program in place. We don't want to be fucking around in a constant deficit on constant low calories, or like I said in that episode, trying to pursue fat loss at the same time and then trying to pursue a performance goal, and it's all a bit of a yo-yo back and forth. The real underlying thing there is that nothing is optimized. If we think about two goals, like a performance goal over here needing good energy coming in, and then a fat loss goal needing insufficient energy coming in, we actually know that that's what's required. If you're trying to pursue both of those things at the same time, neither of them are going to be optimized because they have completely different requirements. So if you're kind of dipping a toe in each, the other one is therefore suffering. So this is where, again, I think it's important to think about the next 6 to 12 months as a whole and think, if I've got one of those things on my mind, or I've actually locked one in and I'm scheduled to do one, if I do have a fat loss goal, at what time am I prioritizing each one? And super important to clock here, if you're someone who, again, is in that position of like, oh, I would just love to lose 2 to 3 kilos. So then you're hearing, and you're doing one of these events, and then you're hearing all this thinking, okay, when am I doing my fat loss? When am I doing my event? Whatever. I would look at that and go, do you really need to lose 2 to 3 kilos? Or again, let's say you've got an event scheduled for March or April next year. If you were to spend the next 9 months eating at maintenance, fueling your body, getting after it in the gym, training towards that thing, as if you're not going to be in fucking awesome shape. Like, if you're in a position right now where you don't need to lose weight to be in a healthy weight range and you're very close to your quote goal weight, but you are in that energy of like, oh, I'd love to just lose a couple of kilos. Imagine like 9 months eating at maintenance, sufficient protein every single day, really solid training program in place, super consistently, sitting at a maintenance intake with sufficient protein coming in and a super like structured, progressive, awesome training program in place, long term is so fucking underrated. So underrated. And again, I'm running a fat loss phase, so I feel like it's a clash, but I'm going to say it because even when I think about myself, I'm kind of going to yo-yo all over the place here, guys, but it'll all tie in, I promise. Even if I think about myself, if we think about my overall nutrition and training over a 12-month period, it usually is only about 3 months that are spent in the deficit. And my deficits are always very effective. Like I get in, like I always say, short, sharp, direct, get in, get it done, get out. I truly think the reason they're so effective is because I spend so much time out of them. So I think physically my body responds so well when you get in there. Like when you actually get in there and really settle into the deficit, your body's functioning so well because you've given it so much food, you've trained it so well, like it's a fucking well-built machine. And then you're just like, okay, right now I want a deficit. Let's actually go. You stick to it, you get a really good result because physically your body's in a great position to do so. But also mentally, you've spent so much time prioritizing other things so you don't have diet fatigue and you're not over it and you're not like in a long-term cycle of cravings and falling off track and trying to stick to it, but being over it and all that shit, because you spend so much time where those things aren't even an issue. So then when you look at a 3-month window where you're like, okay, I'm going to prioritize fat loss and implement a deficit, again, it's a lot easier to stick to. You get in, you get the result because it's very short, sharp. Here's my plan, get it done, get out. I actually can't even remember where I was going with that, but I think that's an important thing to think about as well. And I had that on my notes for today, but I think where I was going is the long-term spending time on the higher intake and not prioritizing fat loss is where the actual physique is built. So if we think about like what we've spoken about before with the toned physique and muscle gain and all of that, that's where a physique is built. That's where shape is built, tone is built, muscle gain is built, wicked body comp is built, and then we reveal it in these short-term fat loss phases. So this is so applicable to a person who is, like I said, just dabbling in that just want to lose a little bit more weight type of energy. Do you actually need to? Or are you way better off spending a really solid amount of time building the physique, building the shape? And that's where I was going. If you are focusing on a performance goal and you're in this position of like, oh, but I'd love to drop 2 kilos, fuck off the idea of dropping the 2 kilos. Focus solely on that performance goal. Maintenance intake, sufficient protein every day, wicked training program in place. I know I've said it 20 times, but I'm probably going to say it 20 more because it's so fucking underrated. You will find yourself in the middle of next year just being like, oh my God, I've actually built a pretty wicked rig. I've got wicked shape. I've got all these things. And if you're someone who's like, oh, but I've been training for ages and my weight has maintained for ages, we need to look a little bit deeper and go, have you actually hit sufficient protein every single day over that time? Is your intake actually really consistently eating at maintenance, or are you dieting sometime and then falling off track sometime and then the overall result is maintenance, but there's not a maintenance intake coming in every day? Because that's a lot different, because if you're spending a lot of time like pursuing fat loss or trying to eat well and eat low calorie, your training's not going to be as optimal as a person who's eating at maintenance every day. So important to think about that. And then also, do you actually have a really well-structured, solid, progressive training program in place? Or are you just kind of like going to the gym, faffing about, doing a bit of cardio, doing some weights, but there's no real structure, there's no real progression? Because that's the shit that is going to really actually build the physique. So if you're someone who thinks like, oh, but I've been maintaining and training for a long time and I haven't got that result, I would say it's not all optimized. It's not as structured as well as it could be. So that's what I'd be looking at. But I just think that's really important to think about. And I think so many people would benefit from doing so. And even if we think about that, if you're kind of in that position, but you're like, oh, I do actually have a little bit of fat loss to achieve or whatever, that's where I'd be looking like, okay, I don't need to spend the next 12 months pursuing fat loss. If it's 4 kilos that I think I need to get off, I do not need to spend a fucking year in a calorie deficit. That actually does not make sense. So I would be looking for that short time frame, 8 to 12-ish, maybe. I don't even want to say 16 because it's just too much, but like really 8 to 12-ish weeks where I can knuckle down, implement a really effective deficit, get that little bit of body fat off that I'm talking about, and then come out of that sit at maintenance long term. And again, think about myself. That's literally me every year. 3 months, knuckle down, achieve some fat loss. Straight away on the other side of that, high intake, wicked training, heavy lifts, protein every day, building shape, building physique, building all those things. That's where it's all actually built. And the last little thing I'll say on this, guys, I'm going to wrap it up, but I kind of mentioned before about the festive season and summer and all these things. I think if you're someone, whether you've got a big weight loss goal or you can relate to everything I just spoke about and you've got a smaller weight loss goal, I would really be thinking, okay, for most people, the quote festive season is anything from like 8 weeks of like the whole of November and December. For some people, it's like 2 weeks in late December. It's going to look different for everyone, but usually we hit a time where there's a lot of events, Christmas parties, food, drinks, all the things. Especially I feel like if you've got kids, you start to just have all those school events, breakups, sporting events, all these kind of things kick in. Even school holidays, I feel like they get earlier and earlier every year. So all of a sudden you're at home for a really long time with kids and you're going out more and all this stuff. What I'm getting at here is regardless of whether you got kids or what the festive season looks like for you, for most people, at some point we do actually hit that point where it's like, I'm not really going to stick to a strict diet. If we think about that, this is the perfect time to implement time at maintenance, diet break, a little bit more flexibility, etc. I cannot stress enough the difference between a person who is really educated and understanding of nutrition, intentionally going to maintenance, having a diet break and enjoying more flexibility at that time of year. The difference between that and a person who like tries to stick to a diet, eventually realizes like, this is just too fucking hard. I'm going all in and I'll start dieting again in the new year. The mindset difference on these two people is like polar opposites. And I've seen this shit for like over a decade. I've been coaching people on this stuff, and this is just something that is so heavily spoken about from like September or October onwards in Eat Like Ruby, because watching people go through that shitty cycle every year at Christmas is just so painful. And then watching my girls actually learn all this stuff, get to a point in the festive season where they're like, you know what, sticking to a strict deficit doesn't make a lot of sense for me right now. I'm going to go to maintenance. I'm going to implement XYZ habits or protocols, calorie cycling, diet breaks, extra flexibility, untracked times, all these things that we speak about in Eat Like Ruby. You can actually make a controlled, conscious choice of what suits me and my lifestyle and my structure and everything at this time. I can implement that because it has been a conscious, controlled decision. You feel significantly better about it. And then for a lot of people, we come out the other side of the festive season and then we can be like, okay, cool. Do I go back to fat loss if that's still my goal? Do I have a mini cut if Christmas was a little crazier than I thought? Do I just go back to maintenance and all my performance shit? You can actually, again, make a very conscious decision about where you're at and where you want to go from there, instead of feeling like, oh my God, I just went rogue for 6 weeks and I need to fucking join the next challenge and really make up for it. Such a different mentality. I cannot stress that enough. And I think that, like, what position you're in when that time comes, that is decided now. Because if you get the right education, the right coach, the right program, the right structure, and all this shit in place to actually know loosely how you're going to navigate that time, instead of just freaking out dieting into summer, like quick fix diet into summer, and then, like I said, falling off track because it gets too hard to stick to that with Christmas, that person usually feels pretty guilty, pretty lost, pretty desperate, pretty frantic, and pretty unhappy with their whole plan and the way it's all going, pretty unhappy with the body comp and the result, but also feeling pretty shitty mentally and emotionally because you just feel like you're not on your game and everything's kind of gone to shit. Watching my girls feel like they are on their game and then navigating that in a controlled way to suit the rest of their life is just an absolute fucking game changer. So I can't stress that enough. And like I said, that work happens now because you come into something like the fat loss phase and you learn your deficit and what nutrition looks like for you. And then you start to learn about diet breaks and maintenance and all those things towards the end. And then as we come out of that, you'll come into the festive season and you're able to go, okay, cool. Should I do a diet break? Should I spend time at maintenance? What does this time look like for me? I'm going to set up my plans accordingly. Perfect place for me to wrap this up, but I just think that's really important to think about, guys. So I would really be thinking, where do I fall in terms of big weight loss goal, small weight loss goal, or do I actually need to let go of the weight loss goal? That's the first thing I'd be thinking about. And then wherever you fall with that structure, do I have something else in my plans like a performance goal, an event, etc.? If so, how am I setting up the next 6 to 12 months to actually prioritize different things at different times and optimize different things at different times? What does my lifestyle and my schedule and all these things look like? Maybe you've got holidays and other shit happening, but for most people, I would definitely be looking around that November, December time. How am I actually tackling that in a way that I can feel good physically in my body, but I can also feel good mentally and emotionally and enjoy that time of year? I've said this before, but that should be such an enjoyable time of year. And for so many people, it ends up feeling like shit because of everything I just spoke about. So if you can pre-plan and know that you've got systems in place to actually enjoy that time of year, like I said, absolute game changer. And then you can come into 2025 and be like, okay, cool. Where to from here? Is it more fat loss? Is it my performance goal now? Am I doing a muscle gain phase? Possibilities are endless, but it's all within your control if you actually get organized, get educated, and have the best plans and systems in place to do so. That is all from me today. I hope that was helpful. I hope it was educational. Like always, guys, if you enjoyed the episode, like it, rate it, subscribe, reshare it, tag Eat Like Ruby, do all the things. Obviously, like I said a few times, the final round of the fat loss phase is open right now. This is our final round for the year. So if you resonated with anything we just spoke about and you've got the fat loss goals, I would definitely get in that. Otherwise, I will be back next week, I'm sure, with more Ruby rants, plenty more to say. But thank you guys so much for listening.